Hello and welcome to Who Wore It Better, where I review Raw and Smackdown back to back and try and figure out which show won for the week. Before we get into Raw and Smackdown though, it's time for a brand new segment called the Release Roundup. Well, it's time for the Release Roundup. Yup. Of course, the big news this past weekend was that Emma, Summer Rae, and Darren Young were all released on Sunday. If this news happened 3 or 4 months ago, I wouldn't have been shocked about any of these releases. I'm still not surprised about Summer Rae and Darren Young, though Emma's release is not shocking, but it is surprising given the timing of it, because she's not just been lingering, not on television for a while. She's been in TV, she's had some high-profile matches. She just had 2 back-to-back matches with Asuka before she got released. In hindsight, the fact that she looked so strong against Asuka and wasn't totally dominated makes WWE look kind of foolish for having booked her that way, then to release her. It seems very weird, the timing of it. You know, it made me wonder, did she ask for her release? But then the tweet she sent out of the broken heart emoji makes you think otherwise. I don't think it's going to hurt Asuka at all in the long run that she had competitive matches with Emma, though I do think it's going to do nothing but help Emma's stock as she, gets ready to work indie dates and stuff in the fallout of this release. Because hey, she looks really good against Asuka, who's like, a big deal. So I think she's going to get more bookings that way and be treated with a little more respect than she would have been if she was just not on TV and that got released. I think it's going to be more difficult for Summer Rae to find work post WWE than perhaps Emma. It is disappointing to see that Emma got cut here, because I think a lot of people on social media are saying, well, I never saw the appeal of Emma. I don't get why people are so mad that she's gone. I think it's just because, she definitely had the potential and she had the ability. She was trained by Lance Storm. She really had a lot of potential there, but for whatever reason, she was never really used that potential. There was, of course, the issue several years ago where she was released and rehired within 24, 48 hours because of the fact that she allegedly shoplifted an iPad case or something. That probably dinged her credibility with the company pretty badly for a time. And then, of course, there's a lot of the bad luck, the bad timing of injuries she suffered. She and Dana Brooke were brought to Raw from NXT, and then immediately she was out with a back injury for 6 months. Then there's the whole Emelina nonsense. That was just a weird tangent that just went on for no discernible reason and just kept going on forever. And now, just as she was on the cusp of getting some recognition, she gets cut. And so that was unfortunate timing there. And speaking of unfortunate timing, let's talk about Lio Rush for a second. Of course, the guy's been on NXT for a couple of days, essentially, and he really stepped in it with this tweet the day that Emma got released. I don't know what he was trying to do. He explained it, and other people have tried to defend him, saying it was a joke that was blown out of proportion. I didn't really see the humor in the joke. I didn't get the punchline. He was obviously using the Asuka catchphrase to describe why Emma got released. But basically, it seemed to me like, dude, you're essentially cutting a promo on social media against someone you will likely never work with in any capacity. And also, she's more experienced than you. You're basically trashing a veteran. I just thought it was in pretty poor taste and just bad timing to essentially make this joke, whether you thought it was funny or not, about somebody who lost their job. The livelihood of wrestlers is a very fleeting thing. And Lio Rush, I think, is too young and too invincible in his mind to really grasp that, because he's been doing great in the indies before he got signed. And now he's here in the big leagues of NXT and everything, and he's just getting his feet wet, and then he pulls this bullshit. I think it was I'm not going to crucify him for it. I'm not saying he should job forever and a day. I think he will. I think there's going to be a long road ahead of him for him to rebuild any kind of credibility or respect that he had in the locker room. The wrestlers are a tight-knit bunch, and when what he did was kind of run down someone who lost their job, I think everyone's going to galvanize around and support Emma in favor of who the fuck's this guy, Lio Rush? I think that he will, we are all human, we all make mistakes, we all do things that we are not proud of doing. I think he should get a chance to work his way up and re-earn the respect of his peers. It will be a long road for him, but if he keeps his nose clean and maybe stays off social media, maybe takes a couple of etiquette courses in social media, he'll be fine. Raw begins with the whole roster on the stage, and GM Kurt Angle is apologizing to the troops over what happened last week on Raw with the SmackDown siege at the end of the thing. And as he's talking more, Stephanie McMahon comes out. We haven't seen her in 211 days since WrestleMania. I did the math. That's how I know the exact figure. She comes out here, and we were doing fine these last 211 days without her. We didn't need that presence. We didn't need that in our lives. But no, she comes back rearing her head into the business, and nothing has changed. She shows no character development from between WrestleMania and now. She's still grating. She still browbeats Kurt and just takes the piss out of people, and nothing happens in return to her. Unless unless she has this massive change of heart and decides to get humiliated every week like her old man was, I don't think we need Stephanie on this show. I mean, obviously you can't have, it's like, it seems ridiculous to say, but long term you can't have this show without her because she is a kayfabe commissioner. She is Kurt Angle's boss and everything. But like, she immediately comes in and is like way less forgiving of Kurt Angle for like this one transgression here between like TLC with Braun getting crushed to death in the trash compactor and then the SmackDown Siege. Way less forgiving of him than she was of Mick Foley. She was like way tolerant of Mick Foley and all of his transgressions and everything. I felt the build to that firing went a lot longer than this spat here between the two of them. And so she basically says, well, now Kurt, you're going to be the team captain of Team Raw at Survivor Series. I think it would have had a lot more impact if he said that. And then she threatens, oh, Kurt, you'll be fired if Raw doesn't win. So that was just, it was kind of a downer. We did not need Stephanie back. It's just that really, that pissed me off. After the break, we see Kurt seeing Stephanie off in her limo, and as that's happening, another limousine pulls in, and it's The Miz, and Curtis Axel, and Bo Dallas is back. Oh, that warmed my heart to see Bo Dallas back after a few weeks. Stephanie may be back, and that sucks, but hey, Bo Dallas is back, and that makes me feel just a little bit better inside. Miz is griping about how Kurt was named team captain, and Kurt tells him to shut up and makes a match for him to defending the IC title later tonight. The first scheduled match of the night is Bayley taking on Alicia Fox, who of course last week became the team captain for the women's team at Survivor Series for Team Raw, and she's all captained out. She's got the ship's captain's hat on, and she's going to the microphone doing the whole airline pilot thing. It was pretty hilarious. The hat reminded me of when Mike Rotundo he went from being the captain of a wrestling team in WCW to the captain of a ship. Long story. Anyway, she announces a replacement for herself, and it's Nia Jax, who's back from her leave of absence or not wanting to job to Sasha Banks or whatever the hell it was. I know the general consensus online is, that Nia Jax walked out because she didn't want a job to Sasha Banks. Oh, there's an article on SportsIllustrated.com about it. I don't buy that being the whole story as to why she left. I don't know what else it could be, but I just don't want to take that story at face value, because how often have we heard stories, about backstage stuff and having been totally wrong in the end. So it's a competitive matchup. Nia Jax does beat Bayley. There is a botch very early on, but they recover pretty well. Points if you could recognize what it was. And so as they're doing that whole thing at the end of this segment, then out comes Samoa Joe. His entrance overlaps the end of the women's segment, which is something you don't see very often. And I think it's not the only time you're going to see it in this show too. It makes things feel more unpredictable, and I like that. That's one thing I've been clamoring for on this show, is more unpredictability. Samoa Joe comes out and gets a big pop, but he does return to his heelish ways pretty quickly in his promo. He says he's going to, when he beats up his opponent tonight, he's going to pretend he's beating up each and every one of you. How many heels in the last couple of years have said that exact phrase in their promos? I'm going to pretend I'm doing such and such to each and every one of you. It's such a McMahon Triple H line, and I swear so many heels say it, it gets kind of redundant. Joe quickly gets back to his dominant ways here in his match with Apollo Crews, aka, bitch, sit your ass down. I love the way he yelled that out in the middle of the Uranagi on Apollo there. He beats Apollo with the Coquina Clutch, then he does a face-off with Titus, and he puts him in the Coquina Clutch right after that. I love Titus's sell with his arm as he's in the Coquina Clutch. I thought it was pretty funny. So yeah, Joe looks great here in his comeback here. People want to cheer him, but they're not ready to pull the trigger on that just yet. Intercontinental Championship match as The Miz defends against his surprise opponent, Matt Hardy. And this was a great match. I think The Miz made Matt look very good here. There were a lot of false finishes here. Miz using a little chicanery with the ropes to win the match and retain. I don't want to go into the details here. If you want to watch the match, I recommend you do so. I think it's one of the better singles matches you'll see on Raw from Matt Hardy in quite some time. And yeah, I was really happy with it. Up next, Asuka, who does all the hand gestures, murders Stacey Cullen, the local girl of the night. This is probably how WWE wishes the matches with Emma went in hindsight. After that, we see Kurt Angle backstage in his office, and who shows up but the GM of SmackDown, Daniel Bryan, and Angle is screaming into his walkie-talkie, they're here, they're here. He's freaking out over it, which is pretty hilarious to see the way he's acting there. And Daniel says that Shane doesn't know that he's there, and he's trying to, basically kind of do a bit of a peace offering, and Angle doesn't buy it. He holds him hostage. He locks him in the office, and as Daniel's on the phone with somebody, the lights turn off, and then Daniel's like, oh, the lights are turned off. I don't know where I am. Dude, you have your phone on. You can't turn your flashlight on? And all of a sudden, out comes Kane and choke slams Daniel Bryan in the dark. Daniel probably didn't take a real bump here. It's in the dark. That's how they cover it up. So then you see him getting stretchered off later in the show. But yeah, pretty cool to see Daniel showing up to Raw, doing some more of the integration between Raw and SmackDown, and showing how he's kind of the more sympathetic figure. He's not on, he's not on the exact same page with Shane McMahon. Curious to see how this Daniel-Shane dynamic will build from here. Up next, we have Finn Balor taking on Cesaro, and they are just really hammering home this line they have for Finn Balor now. The extraordinary man who does extraordinary things, which don't you think that would be a better fit for Cesaro, the guy who can superplex Finn from the outside apron into back up and into the ring? That's more extraordinary than whatever the hell Pele kicks or soccer kicks that Finn Balor does, in my opinion. Anyway, it's still a good match. Finn does win with a double stomp at the back of Cesaro's head, and then as he's celebrating on the stage, Kane comes back out and tombstones Finn in kind of a follow-up to last week where he hit him with 3 choke slams. It was a bad angle to show the tombstone because you could see there's a huge amount of daylight between the top of Finn's head and the floor, but still it was very powerful looking for Kane here. So then Kane takes on Seth Rollins, and I'm loving the overlapping they're doing here. Not just the Samoa Joe overlapping with the women's segment, but you also have Kane still involved with Finn Balor, probably doing something with Braun Strowman in the future. They're definitely planting the seeds for that. And then you've got him taking on Seth and Dean here, and of course we can't forget the relationship that Kane and Seth had when they were part of the Authority together. Kane wins after the Bar come out and distract Seth and Dean. Kane hits Seth the choke slam to win the match. Then Kane and Cesaro and Sheamus beat up Dean and Seth. He hits 2 more tombstones that look a lot better than the first one to Finn. And yeah, we're getting more of that overlapping stuff, and we're not done yet. The Miz and the Miz Taraj go to their locker room to find a bag of garbage sitting in the middle of the room, and Miz just instantly knows, oh, Braun Strowman's coming back. I'm like, that's a weird calling card. Like, oh, because he was in a garbage truck, that means he is a garbage man now. He is made of garbage, therefore he's leaving his scent, his trace. People, I'm like, I really hope that Garbage Man is not Braun Strowman's new gimmick. In the spirit of Halloween, we have the Trick or Street fight. It's Heath Slater and Rhino taking on Anderson and Gallows, and I'm instantly reminded of last year's Trick or Street fight between Enzo and I believe it was Carl Anderson. It was either Gallows or Anderson, and that match was madness. I loved that match. This one could not live up to that in any capacity. You had Slino dressed as Santa and Mrs. Claus. Anderson and Gallows are Chad Too Bad and Tex Ferguson, respectively. Never thought I'd see the day where Sex Ferguson shows up on an episode of Monday Night Raw. They go for a noggin knocker on the heels, with both heels wearing pumpkins on their heads, and they miss. I didn't know cream pies were a Halloween tradition, but Rhino uses that as a spot anyway. The crowd is dead for this thing. This is a sloppy ass match, and I think it's because they had a lot of sloppy, slippery stuff to work with. As Booker T said, things get slippery in the ring with stuff like this. The match ends when both the heels put pumpkins on their heads. Chad goes for a second rope headbutt onto Rhino through the table, but Rhino he catches him and suplexes him through the table, and he pins Anderson, Chad Too Bad, while Tex Ferguson is just still celebrating with the pumpkin on his head like an idiot, and they think they won. What a dumb, silly match this was. It wasn't even so bad it was good. It got some chuckles from me, but it was not a good silly. Elias comes out and sings the Ballad of Jason Jordan, where he brags about having hit Jordan last week with the guitar. It's too bad you can't understand a fucking word he's singing, because it's just every word is it sounds like mush mouth. It sounds like if he put on Sin Cara's mask and tried to sing a song, because that's how muffled it was. I don't know why. I don't know if they just didn't rehearse or didn't do a proper sound check beforehand. It did not sound good. I couldn't make anything. I don't know if that's supposed to be designed to get more heel heat for Elias. Hey, if he's going to sing a song, we better understand what the hell he's saying. But I don't know. Maybe I think maybe probably intentional. Jason Jordan does come out to interrupt. They scuffle for a bit. Then Jordan breaks Elias's guitar. He snaps it in half with his foot and breaks everything. So a good moment for Jason. I think he looks strong here in his little feud with Elias. I just wish Elias, you could make out what he said more. I don't think that was by design. Kalisto squashes Drew Gulak here, but I will say I love Drew Gulak's character. I mean, I admit I don't watch 205 Live, so I'm not familiar with his character there, but what they're showing us on Raw the last couple of weeks, I am loving. I want to make time out of my day to see 205 Live and see what Drew Gulak does, because I'm loving this just totally nerdy character, and the dynamic between he and Enzo, especially the last couple of weeks, and especially on Monday, was just gold. And the fact that Enzo's so cartoonish and so Daffy Duck compared to Drew and his just nerdy self and his obliviousness to certain slang is just, I love it. It's a great combination there. In our main event, we have the Raw Women's Championship, where Alexa Bliss defends against Mickie James in a TLC rematch. Bliss's entrance attire is inspired by Child's Play, doing some more of the Halloween connection there. Very good match between these two, much like their match at TLC. Alexa wins with a big old elbow strike to the snout to retain the belt. For a heel, Alexa's being booked pretty strong for like a face almost. You know, she doesn't cheat to win, and she pretty much proves herself right in her feuds. Like she says, she runs down opponents and makes them look dumb, but she's not really cheating to do it. She's doing everything by the book for the most part. I guess I shouldn't be too surprised, because that's very much how Triple H was booked during the Reign of Terror that I've covered on the show before. So I'm seeing some parallels here. As you know, she's celebrating. Miz and company immediately trying to leave because Kurt said, no, you got to stay here to the end. You know, and the Miz's whole thing is he's trying to escape from Braun Strowman. No one wants to help him. You know, Kane doesn't want to help him. The Bar doesn't want to help him. So he and the Miz are trying to leave. And as soon as they get in the limo, they're cut off by a garbage truck. And then out comes in this ridiculously overproduced segment. Like just it's you could tell, you can see when things feel organic in the way they shoot things, and when they pre-produce things like hours in advance. And like this is what that was. All these different alternate camera shots of like the truck backing up and the shot of Miz looking shocked. I don't know. And then you finally see the trash compactor open up and Braun just kind of rises like a Terminator and then does the roar, and then the Miz-Taraj flee and Braun chases after them. And this is all still happening while Alexa is celebrating in the ring. So again, we see more overlap where we see the women do their thing, then all of a sudden out come this totally separate, unrelated thing. The Miz-Taraj are fleeing for Braun Strowman. He just beats the shit out of all of them, especially Curtis Axel. He hits them like a dozen running power slams, and he's responding to the one more time chants. He puts Curtis through a table. I guess he's a full-blown face now. Before we move on to SmackDown, this week's edition of Who Wore It Better is sponsored by SeatGeek. It's an app you can download on your iOS or Android device that gathers ticket events for all kinds of shows. If you want to save money on your next concert, sporting event, or WWE show, go download the SeatGeek app using the link at the top of this description. Go to the Accounts tab and use the promo code ZANE and get $20 back on your next ticket purchase. SmackDown begins with Shane McMahon cutting a promo. It takes him 8 minutes to finally get to the point where he announces himself as the team captain for SmackDown at Survivor Series. Doesn't that feel a lot better when Shane makes that announcement himself as opposed to when Kurt had that thrust upon him on Raw by Stephanie McMahon? It will be an interesting dynamic. It makes sense that Shane is announcing himself as the captain since Kurt is the captain for Raw. Should be an interesting combination to see what those two do in the ring. I love it during this show when Corey says, oh, you could have this person wrestle this person. The possibilities are literally endless. No, they're not. There's like, I don't know the math, but because it's 5-on-5, there's an end. There's a finite number of possibilities. We then go right into the 2 out of 3 falls match between Dolph Ziggler and Bobby Roode. The winner will go on to be in Team SmackDown at Survivor Series. This was a very good match. Dolph wins the first fall with a super kick. Bobby Roode wins the second fall with a sunset flip out of a slingshot into the corner. And then Bobby wins the third fall with a glorious DDT that he spent several minutes fighting for. There's several attempts where he tried to do it, but Dolph kept finding ways out of it. Very good match here. Can't complain about either of these guys' work. But again, the whole Bobby Roode as a face experiment to me doesn't jive with me the same way as Bobby Roode as a heel, but SmackDown's very heel heavy, so I get where they're going here. 2 spots remain at this point on Team SmackDown. Backstage, we see the New Day all in costume. We see Xavier Woods as Jimmy Hart, Big E as Akeem, and Kofi Kingston as Brother Love. I love these costumes. I love the stuff they did here in this bit with Aiden English and Rusev backstage. Rusev and Aiden, of course, are really kind of poo-pooing the whole spirit of Halloween. It should be Rusev Day, and Rusev dumps out the candy, and Big E challenges him to a match later tonight, so we'll see where that goes. We get a backstage segment with the women of SmackDown, and really it's the only time we see any women on SmackDown. On this whole thing is like a 90-second promo backstage, and it's kind of jarring to see when you consider how represented they usually are on the show. To see them kind of relegated to this one backstage bit is kind of shocking. I mean, I don't think it's like, oh, I'm not going to poo-poo the whole thing. Oh, boo, they're sexist. No, I just think the difference between what they normally do and what they did here was kind of surprising. And Becky's trying to rally the troops. At one point, James Ellsworth, who's dressed literally like a dog, really just kind of hammering the point home about the relationship between he and Carmella. He's a dog, he's dressed in a dog costume and barks at Becky Lynch, and she sprays him with a spray ball. Like, hey, you stole my gimmick. That's gimmick infringement, Becky. Baron Corbin and Sin Cara in a rematch from the previous 2 weeks. I'm like, seriously? We couldn't have it be a tag team match or something? We couldn't have, like, you know, Baron Corbin on commentary during a Sin Cara match? Something, literally anything different from this? The match starts off with, the whole thing is Baron Corbin is like spending the time like trying to tear away at Sin Cara's mask, and Sin Cara finally snaps and just goes ham on Baron Corbin. He goes like Ralphie on Scott Farkas in Christmas Story, and that leads to the match being thrown out, disqualification. Then backstage, we see him later on cutting a promo that sounds like Elias singing a song, where he says he went through hell to get this mask, and he's going to go through hell to keep it. The way they're building the masks thing, I'm like, oh, wouldn't that be cool? It's like, on the one hand, it'd be cool, but on the other hand, I know where it would go. Where you have like, oh, we have a hair versus mask match for the U.S. title or something between Sin Cara, Baron Corbin. I don't think Corbin would look good, shaved bald, but then again, that hairline's not doing him any favors. So I think that would actually kind of be a cool natural progression, the way they're building up the mask. Maybe be mask versus championship or something. But then you would hate to see Sin Cara lose and be on mask, because it's the one thing he's got going for him, really. And the news I've heard is the fact that he re-signed recently, got his contract extended, he has a new shoe deal and everything, and they're really trying to finally build him up as like the next, Latin American superstar, the next Latino superstar, what have you, and which I think is definitely deserved, but I think they really have to, keep that mask on him. Backstage, the Usos cut a promo on Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose for Survivor Series, and then come Benjables, and Benjables says that next week they have a tag team championship match against the Usos, and then Benjables does this weird like call and response rap. It doesn't sound good, but the highlight of the whole thing is Sheldon comes out and does like the whole reaction meme, like the whole thing with his face here. That was pretty funny part, but just the whole segment was just kind of like, eh. We get AJ Styles taking on Sunil Singh in singles action. It's of course a kind of a rinse and repeat from the previous week when AJ took on Samir and beat him in very quick fashion. The same thing happens here, but immediately afterward, Jinder and company just beat up on AJ, and so they beat him up. They throw him into the turnbuckle post and wreck his back and everything. So Jinder's looking strong, getting a lot more heat going into his match with Brock Lesnar. His pre-match promo, I think, was pretty strong too, the one against Lesnar, except the part where he called himself a Beastmaster. I think that one's not going to get over very well. Big E takes on Rusev in a fun little match here. I love the fact that Corey makes a Conrad Thompson reference during the introduction for the New Day. He calls him the Alabama Dream. This match was okay. It ends with Aiden English getting on the table and distracting everyone by singing the Rusev Day song, and then he takes out Xavier Woods on the outside. Kobe gets on the apron during the distraction. Big E gets kicked from behind by Rusev, and Rusev wins the match. And then later on, he goes to Shane's office and demands that he be in the Survivor Series team. So next week, he's taking on AJ Styles, and they're really hammering the whole Rusev Day thing pretty hard. And I think it's pretty funny the way they're building up every day is Rusev Day. I do like this balance they have with Rusev, where he's like, he does have comedic stuff and delivery with things, like him being partnered with Aiden English and then really, driving home the Rusev Day thing is pretty funny. But at the same time, he's not falling all over himself and being comedic and stupid in the ring. If you can find that balance where you're like, you can have a sense of humor outside the ring and in your backstage skits and stuff, and then you go and do like serious stuff in the ring, I think that's a great combination. It's why I loved guys like Kurt Angle and Edge and Christian and stuff when I first started watching. They had that balance. The Faction Files is a very good send-up of Stranger Things. I love that show. I haven't seen season 2 yet, but it's on my to-do list. I loved season 1, and I loved what they did here with Stranger Things in this segment here. I love the fact that Tyler Breeze is dressed up as 11. Then out comes Ty Dillinger from the Fort, also dressed as 11, but he says he's a 10. Just that joke set itself up really. Then Victor is dressed as Barb, and Tyler goes, "Of course you'd beat Barb. She sucked." Just a great little reference to Barb there. And then the lights go out, and then the Bludgeon Brothers picture is lit up, and then they get beat up. And then it turns, I think they're teasing to a Saw parody for next week. I wish they could do more Stranger Things stuff here, but I just love this segment. It looks like a ton of work went into it too. Main event time, Kevin Owens taking on Shinsuke Nakamura. The winner will go on to join Team SmackDown for Survivor Series. Very good match between these two. I mean, these two can easily put on a hell of a show any night of the week, and this was no exception. The match is ending when Sami Zayn comes out to try and distract Shinsuke, but then Randy Orton's music hits, and it's like a sneak attack where Orton grabs Sami from behind, drops him on the table. That distraction allows Shinsuke to beat Kevin with the Kinshasa to win. And so my prediction for Survivor Series stands with Kevin and Sami both out of Team SmackDown and one spot remaining. I do feel that they are going to find some way to ruin SmackDown's chances at Survivor Series just to spite Shane McMahon. But yeah, I think it was a very good match, very good way to end the show. Time now for me to decide which show won for the week, Raw or SmackDown. This was a supremely difficult decision for me this week because I think both shows entertained me in different ways. For me to pick one over the other would be a disservice to the one I did not pick. If I said that one show was the winner for the week, I'm not saying the other one sucked. I think they were both very strong shows. In fact, I never really do this, very rarely, but I'm gonna have to give this one a tie. I think both shows win for me this week because for very different reasons. I think SmackDown was a more complete show, only very few weak points. In fact, the only time I didn't really like something on SmackDown this week was the Benjables promo and maybe the Baron Corbin Sin Cara thing. But also with Raw, though, it was far more engaging, far more interesting. I was harping about it earlier, just the overlapping and the cross promotion of different angles and different characters. Samoa Joe, first of all, Night of Returns on Raw, that was great, except for Stephanie McMahon. Stephanie coming back really sucked, but everyone else coming back, you know, Bo and Braun and Joe and all those guys, that was really cool to see those guys. Breath of fresh air. But I love the fact that, you know, Samoa Joe coming out in the middle of the women's segment, and then, you know, Braun coming out and the whole Miz thing happening with the women's segment celebrating there. And then you've got, you know, Braun is in a lot of feuds, Kane's in a lot of feuds, the Miz is doing a lot of different things. There's a lot of stuff, moving parts. It's a living, breathing organism now, it feels like, on Raw. It feels like multiple things are happening at once. It feels organic again. It feels fun again. I haven't had the feeling of that watching Raw in a long, long time. And that's what I've been saying for a long time that Raw needs. It needs unpredictability. It needs integration. It needs a lot of stuff like that to really be entertaining and make those hours go by. And I think that really had it. Now, of course, Raw was not perfect. Again, I didn't like Stephanie coming back. I didn't like the Trigger Street fight. And I think there was, you know, the one detriment, I think, to all that cross promoting and all the stuff going on, the angles, was that the acting was really bad. Daniel Bryan's acting was bad. The Miz was over the top. And then again, the overproduced nature of that ending segment was just so like over the top to me. It kind of took me out of it. But like, I just think the fact that they're putting this much work into it and doing all these different things, I think was just, it blew me away, that level of dedication. So SmackDown, you know, and here's the thing, I've said before in this segment, I will always be a story guy over a wrestling guy. SmackDown, I think, had the better wrestling overall, but I think as far as storylines and character development, I think Raw was just leaps and bounds ahead of what was going on SmackDown. So I know it's kind of a cop-out. I know some people are going to be pissed when I say it, but I am going to award points to both Raw and SmackDown this week. It is a tie. I think Raw has the right idea as to how to stack a show and how segments should flow together and keep things engaging, but they really need to get better actors or better writers. Let me know what you guys thought about Raw and SmackDown this week in the comment section below, and be sure to vote which show you thought was better in the gimmick in the upper right hand corner of your screen. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com, and check out Patreon.com/WrestlingWithRegret for exclusive perks and some bonus content. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.